for the next session, I would like to invite an ambassador who is, well, he confuses me because he's not only an ambassador of the UK, he's so well engaged and involved in the Israeli high-tech that he is also a high-tech ambassador and even a Israeli high-tech ambassador. His Excellency Ambassador Matthew Gould from Britain, who previously served as private secretary with Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, and he also served in Tehran. So Matthew, you wish to invite your guests, or I will present them?
Thank you very much, Earl. I'm particularly grateful for you branding me the high-tech ambassador, which is an improvement on my normal brand, which is the ambassador who looks like a child. I wanted to say, Idan rightly pointed out that your conception of this conference and your getting up and running it is extremely Israeli. It's one of two, I thought, really sort of quintessentially Israeli things about the conference. The other one was the fact that the Vice Prime Minister of Israel came, and instead of questions, people queued up to tell him why he was wrong. I thought that was very Israeli as well. I thought before we start, I would pose a riddle, which is the Vice Prime Minister of Israel has a cup of coffee with a fly in it. Actually, no, let's leave that. Rather than talk myself, I wanted to bring up two people who are, for me, the key champions of the tech partnership between the UK and Israel. So if I could invite on stage, first of all, Haim Shani, who is well known to you, both as the former CEO of NICE and most recently as the Director General of the Ministry of Finance. Haim, thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps we should sit down. Okay. Save us both the effort. And recently, we were enormously proud to be able to put out an announcement to say that you were going to work with the embassy as the non-executive chairman of our new high-tech hub. And that for us was a very big and important moment. I also want to invite to join us Saul Klein from Index Ventures, one of the leading tech investors from the UK, who has found his way into and been part of some of the most exciting tech stories globally. And you've been in Israel for how long?
About 18 months.
About 18 months. And I think are not only a champion for what UK and Israel have to offer, but personify it. Now, if I put this down, is this going? So I'm juggling microphones. Put that there, and just start to ask you a number of questions. If I want to start off with you, Haim, you're on the verge of leaving government service, or you've left?
On the verge of left. It's a complex answer, but I'm on my way out. No, technically I've left, yes.
And one of the very first appointments you've taken is non-executive chair of this UK-Israel Technologies Hub. Why have you done that? Other than the enormous sums of money that we're paying you.
First of all, you're a great salesman. But seriously speaking, it's an interesting challenge because it's an innovative concept. And while at the government, we were looking at innovation in how countries could collaborate. And it's a very traditional concept to have a trade mission. You have the UK trade mission in Israel, and we have our trade missions around the world, where their primary objective is obviously to sell one country's product and financial investment into the other. And what you are trying to create is something that I've never heard of, and it is trying with some sort of a government-public partnership to create partnership between industries where the two countries jointly should benefit from this exercise. So this is new concept, and I like startups, so I said, if I can help, great. So this is one reason. The second reason is, personally, I was fortunate to have a very positive experience with the UK while going up the company that I led for 9 years, NICE, and I can tell you all about it, but I had a very personal positive experience. So the combination of it two, I said, bingo.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and we are very, very pleased to have you on board. You're going to be the non-executive chairman of the Technologies Hub. If I could just use this as a shameless opportunity to plug the Hub. At the back we have the director of the Hub, Naomi Krieger, and Lucy Bletchner, the digital manager of the Hub. Can I turn to you, Saul? And tell us, first of all, give us your career history in 60 seconds and how you ended up in Israel.
Sure. So I guess my career's taken sort of three different angles. One is as an entrepreneur, both in the US and in Europe. I started companies, one in the US that I sold to Microsoft in the mid-90s, and one in the UK and Europe, Love Film, that was sold to Amazon in the last couple of years. Secondly, as an operator, obviously selling the company to Microsoft, then went on to work at Microsoft in Redmond, which was an amazing experience. And then as an operator, I hired a CEO that took over from me at Love Film and joined Skype in London, where I ran marketing and customer experience, which was an amazing experience prior to us selling the company to eBay. And I guess my third life is as an investor, which I've been doing in various guises for about 10 years now. First as a seed investor, and then at Index as an early stage investor. And Index operates in the US and in Europe and Israel. We have about $2.5–3 billion under management, and we invest all the way from seed through early stage and to growth. And Israel for us has always been an exciting opportunity, but I'd say one that we didn't really sort of understand and appreciate fully up until the last couple of years in terms of how much of an opportunity it may present for us.
Let me follow that up. And you've now invested in?
Probably, historically we've probably made about 15 investments in Israel. We have, most recently actually, even in the last few months with Haim and Rami at Pitango, we jointly invested in a company called Worklight that was acquired by IBM. We've had a number of successful exits in Israel historically, but I think what excites us about Israel is not so much what we've seen in the past, but what we're going to see in the future. A new generation of companies coming through, a new generation of entrepreneurs in sectors that aren't just in the sort of the sectors that Israel has been famous for historically.
And you've now got a good experience of dealing with a range of Israeli companies. What surprised you about Israeli companies? And give us one good thing and one bad thing.
I think, it's very hard to generalize, obviously, but the way I sort of think about Israel is that it's sort of Silicon Valley as a country. So, you have the full diversity of technology opportunities to invest in, from life sciences to bio to clean tech to IT. And the one thing that we see, is clear across all of those sectors and all of the stages is, the level of innovation, the level of just the raw entrepreneurial talent that you see in Israel. And obviously, the guys who wrote Startup Nation have documented that exceptionally well and sort of sold that to the rest of the world. So I'd say, that's definitely something that we see in Israel as a massive asset. If you're asking me for sort of the glass half empty side of the equation, I'd say, one of the challenges that we see in Israel, and it's not just us, I think it's the people who invest in our funds, historically, while Israel has been amazing at innovation, Israel has been less good at turning innovation into massive, sustainable enterprises. So going from 0 to 50 people in Israel is challenging but possible. Going from 50 to 500 or 50 to 5,000 people or 50 million in revenue to $1 billion in revenue is almost unheard of, other than maybe 5 companies in the last 20 years like M Systems or Checkpoints or Converse or Amdocs or NICE. So I think, you know, what we see is, I mean, is this amazing talent, this amazing opportunity. And, you know, what we hope for the next 10 to 15 years is that, you know, we can participate in the growth of some of these companies that will become, you know, sustainable, standalone world leaders, not just, you know, operating units for large American companies.
Okay, well, thank you. And Haim, you've explored this question of the apparent limits to growth of companies in the Israeli tech sector, both from your vantage point in NICE and then your vantage point in government. And why is it, do you think, that there is this issue about Israeli companies, with a few notable exceptions, not growing beyond a certain point? And I mean, what's the key to unlocking that?
Oh, it's a long story.
Give us the highlights.
We could spend many hours on discussing this issue. Unfortunately, there is no you know, silver bullet or one simple answer to that. It ranges from, first of all, it's very difficult to build billion-dollar companies. And if you look around the world, you will not find many $1 billion of companies. So probably we should limit the target to a few hundred million. It would be good enough. It's a combination of, one, there is a technological trend out there of consolidation in the industry, which we are part of. And so in the IT, where Israel was traditionally strong, there is a certain consolidation, and therefore this is, part of it is a natural step, if you like. It is, to some extent, there is, it's a catch-22, because in order to grow companies, and I really agree with what you said, Saul, you need management team, you need staff, you need people that have the experience to build it, and if you don't have enough supply of companies, then you don't have enough veterans. So if you look at the people that have built, so you have ex-Orbotech and ex-Cytex and ex-ECI and so on, but you don't have many of these, and therefore there's some limit of supply of even if you try to grow one of my major challenges growing up NICE was to find business unit managers, product managers, people that could, part of a bigger company, facilitate the growth, while in the Silicon Valley, it's, again, everything on a relative scale, it is much easier to recruit and find talent. There are issues with the funding. When they went public of NICE, but it was $5 million, $10 million, $20 million. Today, with the Sarbanes-Oxley and with the need to have you know, strong visibility and so on, the bar is much higher. So if the bar is higher, you need much more funding than in the past. So again, another reason. I can go on and on because this is a subject that I know very well.
Okay.
So.
Let's come on to the specifics. I mean, you said before, when you were in charge of NICE, one of the things you did was merged with a British company.
Correct.
And what surprised you about that experience?
That it went far better than my expectations. When I analyzed my career at NICE, what was the turning point for a company that was regarded as a loser in its field, someone that is about to be bought by its competitors, someone that had 15 to 17, 20% market share. What really moved the trigger and make the entire change was the M&A. It's a more polite word than saying acquisition, but practically it was an acquisition. But anyway, an M&A with a UK-based company that together we have moved from 17, 20% market share to close to 35. And in one move, we became market leaders. And that's went very well for us. here. So not a lot, a few people with gray hair. What surprised me, and I was warned that culturally it's not going to work. Forget about it. It's two different cultures. Yes, both of us speak English, but it's not going to work. And it actually was a very, very successful M&A, business-wise, culture-wise, and so on.
Well, let's come on to culture, because I think when you're talking about forging a partnership in tech, I mean, understanding the culture and the cultural differences is important. You've both now been operating, you're both veterans of operating in the Israel-UK space. So, I mean, Saul, what cultural friction do you see between the two tech cultures?
I mean, I'm not sure I see friction as much as lack of interest and awareness as the primary issue. I think, you know, most Israeli entrepreneurs I meet, you know, are very focused either, I mean, talking from a funding perspective, they're focused on local funding opportunities or opportunities in the valley. They're completely unaware that in London there's 5 billion euros of early stage capital sitting, waiting, looking for investments. Now, to be critical of the London investment community, maybe they shouldn't just be sitting there, they should be going out. But, you know, there is a lot of capital available for Israeli companies in London, and I think there is a lack of awareness there. I think, you know, most investors, most corporates in the UK are not really aware of the opportunities here in terms of investment, in terms of enabling technologies. I mean, the UK has some of the biggest retailers in the world, media companies in the world, telecom companies in the world, pharmaceutical companies in the world, energy, water, every single sector you could think of. There is one of the biggest companies in the world in the UK, but very, very few entrepreneurs think about going to the UK to sell their products and services. Even in more complex cultural situations, falls away when there is, you know, supply and demand, when people understand needs and they supply something to fulfill those needs. And I think, you know, to your credit, Matthew, you're trying to do something about that. But, you know, to me, there's a big blind alley running between London and Tel Aviv at the moment, and people just don't know what's on either side. And on both sides, there's massive opportunity.
I have to say, from my perspective, I think that's true, but one of the reasons is there's not just a lack of awareness, there are some false assumptions, false perceptions on each side about the other side. I'd quite like to explore that.
Well, I mean, I'll give you one, in my mind, example of a false assumption. So I think, you know, most people would not be aware that there are at least 10 companies in London that will do $1 billion in revenue, not in market value, in revenue that didn't exist 10 years ago within the next 3 years. Now, most people would say, you're crazy. I mean, this is London. Now, outside of basically San Francisco and Beijing, where, you know, companies are serving a national market, that's pretty much unheard of. Now, again, I think the government in the UK is starting to do a much better job of shining a light on the fact that these companies do exist. And maybe they don't come from hard tech, they come from services, e-commerce, etc. But the reality is, when you look at where massive economic value has been created in the last 10 years, in public markets, not to say that it's not happening below that, but, you know, I think people are not focusing on the fact that there are massive new companies being created that just simply didn't exist 10 years ago that are creating. I mean, I think I pointed out to you, Matthew, that just in London, Index has invested, I think, £180 million in the last 10 years, and that has been in companies that have created 5,000 new jobs and £1.5 billion of new revenue. that didn't exist 10 years ago, and that's just in London. So I think, this is not known.
Okay. Well, same question to you,
Yes,
Haim. I
I
mean,
have.
what misperceptions do you think exist between the two countries?
I have to start with, you're talking about the cultural side.
Culture or trade?
I'll have to start with a small story, very short. When I did this acquisition of a company, it was owned by the French, who acquired a division in the UK called Racal. And I asked the team, the UK team, why do you actually want to be part of a company and partner with the company from the Middle East? It is far away, different culture, and so on. Said, you'll come to our facility after the closing and you will understand. So I came to the facility in Southampton, and they took me to the meeting rooms, and each meeting room was called on the name of the victory of the English on the French. Trafalgar, Waterloo. So they said, better to work with the Israelis than being part of the French company. On a more serious note, there were fear of, we used to think that we think out of the box, we're innovative, and, and UK engineers are a little bit more, how should I say, square. People thought that, okay, we are working very hard, weekends and so on, and in the UK they respect their weekends, not to say anything worse than that. And we saw, yes, people were more meticulous on the application side. Here we saw people that are more innovative maybe on other things, but working with customers and really understanding the needs. So we could find areas of strengths that combined engineering, business understanding, and also customer commitment in both sides, and that's why it worked very well. So very positive experience.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me ask one last question to each of you. Saul, if everything goes well, if the partnership we're trying to create between the two countries in tech works, where do you think we could be in 5 years' time?
Look, I mean, I think the potential for technology to make a difference in people's lives for the next 25 years compared to the last 25 years is significantly larger. The ubiquity of technology is such that it is mainstream in every country in the world. Historically, the US was one of the only markets that was an early adopter or mainstream adopter of technology. So I think, it is to everyone's benefit to become multipolar in the way you think about, your customer relationships. And I think, the UK is certainly a big market in and of itself. It's a big market in terms of accessing capital markets, but it's also a massive gateway to markets all. So I think, both for the UK in terms of accessing the best and the brightest entrepreneurs, technology companies, Israel is a market that, the UK has to get to know better. And I think for Israel, the world is no longer just about the US. And it's really, really important for both sides to make this work, because I think whatever opportunities we think technology have presented so far, we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Okay. Thank you very much, Saul. And Haim, this is a conference, at least on one level, about telecoms in particular. What do you think are the particular challenges that the Israeli telecom sector face? And can UK-Israel partnership be any part of a solution?
Yes, I'm not sure this, I would take this question even broader than just the Israeli companies. If you're looking at the challenges of the telecom industry, infrastructure, bandwidth, scalability, and obviously Israel has many components to offer for this, whether it's can start with the chip design to wireless. There's a lot of activity in this country on the infrastructure and bandwidth future requirements. monetizing the application on the content with a very clever solution, which is challenges for the operators. Not that I would give here a specific promo to a company, but with the billing, a clever billing, sophisticated billing, Israel again is definitely a major player. If you're looking at challenges for security, again for network operators, Israel is a major player. So this is the Israeli part. The challenges for the industry, and if you're looking at the UK beyond being an important market, it's also, and I agree with you, if you're looking at every Israeli startup wants to have his beta at BT, but beyond the BT, being a beta there, roadmaps for the industry are in many cases decided, or there's a significant influence with the global, the Vodafone, the BT, even if you look at T-Mobile, some of their global roadmaps are being decided in the UK.
Telefonica.
Telefonica, of course, yes, with what is it, O2, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a significant roadmap decision, global roadmap decisions that affect the industry. So this collaboration can be very important.
Great. Well, thank you. That's, I would say this. I find both answers extremely persuasive and compelling. Thank you both very much, both being with us this evening, but also for what you're doing to promote what I believe is a partnership which has an enormous amount of potential. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will work. Do we have time for questions? Okay, one question.
Okay, question for you. My name is Ravi Stoffman, and I'm with the Internet company that is looking at cooperation and working in the UK. How can you help us, or how can we take it forward to learn about possible?
We'll connect you. Okay.
We'll connect you. Actually, I have to say I was a little nervous when you said questions, because the last time you said that, it turned into just a personal attack. We would be very, very happy to connect you. I mean, any company here that is interested, either in setting up in the UK, in finding British partners, or just seeing what we have to offer, get through to us at the embassy. We're easy to find, and we'd be delighted to try and sort of make connections for you. Yes, Nomi, can you stand up and wave? Am I allowed one more question?
Okay, one. Thank you. My name is John Sebastian with Benjamin University. And my question is, what is your perception of the Israeli industry and collaboration and future relations? Is Israel a too risky place for one question?
I would say at the moment we do something over $5 billion of trade in both directions between the two countries. So it's not insignificant, and it's growing. It's growing at almost 20-25% every year. So there's a real energy to it. But I have to tell you, my perception is it's nowhere near potential. And part of the reason it's nowhere near potential is because there is a lack of consciousness on each side about what the other side has to offer. There are some lazy default options about who you go to for international partners, and there are certain misperceptions on both sides. And so a lot of what we've got to do is just to introduce people to each other, to combat the misperceptions and to break through some of those lazy assumptions.